Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter, joined by my friend Andrea Picciotti-Bayer. She's legal analyst for EWT and news director of the Conscience Project. Follow her work at conscience-project.org. Andrea, thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing great, Marcus. How are you?
I'm very, very well, thank you. So this is a bit of good news in that it's a step in a right direction, I'd say. This is something that the young people will consider a quote-unquote win. Tell us what's going on with the Texas State Board of Education.
So the Texas State Board of Education took kind of an unprecedented move among state boards of education to come up with a required reading list for its 5.5 million public school students. And included in the list are classics for different ages, different grades, and also among those classics are Bible stories. Passages from the Bible, and their explanation, Marcus, which I think is really wonderful, is to form their young learners in kind of the basis of what is culturally significant for American society. And part of those cultural references and understandings include passages from the Bible.
Tell us about the historical trajectory. So about less than a year ago, Texas required the Ten Commandments to be displayed in every public school classroom. So what kind of a trajectory are we seeing, at least in Texas?
I have been a big fan of what Texas is doing as far as really taking seriously the lawmakers, their responsibility on the education of the young people in their state. Texas, with regard to the Ten Commandments, passed a law, and there are 4 other states, Louisiana, Alabama, and Arkansas, that have similar laws where they mandate the passive display on the walls of the Ten Commandments. Some have kind of contextual references as well as just the listing. But their point in there is, hey, this is a big, significant part of the foundation of American law as well as culture, and we want children to at least have the opportunity to be exposed to the commandments. Now, the posting law doesn't require teachers to teach the commandments. It doesn't require students to recite them. It's a passive display, and if you've been in a public school classroom, you see there's tons of stuff on the wall that are there for kids to contemplate, and this would be, among the different things that the children are exposed to. The inclusion of Bible stories is slightly different, right? Because the stories themselves will become part of the curriculum that children are exposed to, but they're not being presented as far as religious truths. Instead, they're being presented as cultural enrichment. And that leaves to parents, especially parents that are parents of faith, Jewish or Christian, to teach the religious aspect of them. But no one can deny the cultural significance of the Bible to American society.
There's also no denying that the Bible was, without a doubt, the central text that informed the founding of this nation, and therefore it was presupposed that it would always have a place of primacy in the operations of societal life. So a lot of the affronts that we've been seeing in terms of religious liberty, I invite your comment here. It would appear that they stand in contradiction to what the founders and framers thought of in terms of our constitutional living.
I think you're right, Marcus. And the Supreme Court is kind of fixing its own jurisprudence around the presence of things with religious significance in the public square, including in our public schools, right? Several years ago, the Supreme Court developed a test that basically, in effect, scrubbed religion from society, right? And it said if there was any kind of endorsement of religion in the public square, it was out, that was untenable. It was a violation of the Establishment Clause. That is being corrected. That misunderstanding is being corrected. Obviously, that's not what the founders intended. So on the first aspect of the religion clauses, the First Amendment, the Establishment Clause, really there are hallmarks of an establishment of religion and a display or monument or even inclusion in a curriculum doesn't constitute an establishment. Now, the second religion clause, though, is the free exercise clause. And I'm sure your listeners and you for sure remember, Marcus, where a school board in Montgomery County, Maryland, included objectionable materials, very sexually charged materials in the curriculum for very young learners. And they refused religious parents, the right to opt their children out. Mm-hmm. The Supreme Court said that refusal itself interfered with the free exercise because the level of coercion. Now here, again, Bible stories are being presented for their cultural, not their religious significance. So I think that it's very different than the coercive nature of something that clearly interfered with parents' rights to teach their children in matters of kind of understanding sexual education, which has just been kind of universally understood to be the province of parents first.
Now, in that light, like you've rightly mentioned too, the genius and therefore the neutrality of presenting the scriptures in this way puts it in proper standing with other culturally appropriate material, like you state in your piece here, Beowulf and other classical works of literature.
You're right. And I mean, if people wanted to take issue with Shakespeare being taught, or Langston Hughes, which is another author that's included in the list, in general, those objections just would be up to people to raise through the legislative process. It's not an objection that has a constitutional implication, right? You can go and you can argue with your lawmakers, or vote out people that are there, or go to the state school board meetings. And this is where I think we have to appreciate the Constitution, the limits of the Constitution, and the wideness of our democracy, where families and parents can be more engaged if they have objections to certain works of literature being included in a reading list. But I do think that it's really a positive sign, and a sign for the formation of these young people in Texas to be able to understand, for example, the story of Jonah and the whale, which is referenced all throughout literature, in addition to just being a part of kind of our understanding of kind of cultural understandings.
So from there, these biblical lessons at the lowest level can be reclaimed for the sake of the lessons we can learn from in this case, secular neutral perspective, and at least we can reestablish a cultural significance of the place of the Christian scriptures in the life of the United States.
Absolutely. What we can't do, Marcus, is we can't say because there's also a religious significance, they have no place in the education, and that would be a form of discrimination against religion. But we have to know the limits of what the public schools can do. They can't teach as we can as parents. They can't teach as we can as Catholics. Instead, that's the responsibility that we have in our homes and in our parishes, to be able to take that familiarity and give it its proper supernatural context as well.
The other thing, too, is the Bible quite literally shaped our civilization, and so the lessons within the scriptures are perennial, and thank the Lord that children can be exposed to them from a literary perspective.
Absolutely. And God is always going to use a familiarity to draw people closer. We don't need the government to force people, but the government shouldn't be in the business of preventing children from having an encounter with these truths. And I think that's what Texas is saying. This is an important part of society and the creation of American culture, and it makes a student a well-rounded person. And including it in a list of required reading will make these students better citizens and more in touch with their own background.
Andrea, as usual, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your wisdom and also covering these issues for us.
Thanks for having me on, Marcus.
My guest has been Andrea Picciotti-Bayer, legal analyst for EWTN News, and she's been talking about how Texas has moved forward to allow for the reading of different stories of Scripture in classrooms, and frankly, this is a good reclamation in terms of the cultural significance of the Scriptures. I'm Marcus Peter.